Welcome to the Hardcore MBA Podcast with your host, Erlend Bakke. Would you like to have a free copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Never Work Again? All you have to do is rate, review, and subscribe to Hardcore MBA Podcast on iTunes and email us a screenshot of your review to erlend@mroutsource.com.
Hi, this is Mitch Axelrod. I'm the author of The New Game of Business, The New Game of IP, and the #1 bestseller, The New Game of Selling. And today's conversation I'm very excited about because with me is someone who I've come to know and become friends with. He's also a client, and he's also a partner. And we're going to talk today about something very close to my heart, and one of the biggest and most important parts of the new game. I call it leverage ability. It's the ability to leverage OPE, other people's everything. And that includes your time, your skill, structures of other people, other people's resources. And today, I want to focus in on how do we leverage the time and talent of other people by way of outsourcing. And with me is Erlend Bakke. Erlend, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to have you here. Erlend is a Norwegian serial entrepreneur, someone I would classify as psychologically unemployable, right? He's also an international #1 bestseller. He was actually born in London. And he owns 3 companies. Mr. Outsource, MrOutsource.com is where you can reach him there, 360, and 360 Factory. Erlend talks about entrepreneurship. He does it, though, with a focus on how to automate and outsource your business so that you, like me, can avoid the trap of becoming a business prisoner, sort of a slave to your business, all right? And this is something that we entrepreneurs and small business owners are constantly wrestling with and struggling with. And so Erlend likes to talk about how do you leverage your time through other people. And so, Erlend, it's great to be with you. We've had some great conversations over this past year, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So let's get right into talking about how did you actually get started doing outsourcing?
Well, I found myself about 6 months into my second business. I managed to get a client in my 360 photography business. And I've been working, for 30 hours straight to meet the deadline. And I was actually using my left arm instead of my right arm, which for the mouse, for the computer mouse. And I had RSI in my right arm, and I was using all the shortcuts and all the tools, and I had to meet this deadline, and the sun was coming up. I had ramen noodles, the good old entrepreneurial story, ramen noodles and Red Bull and all that going on. But I realized that this wasn't really what I signed up for. So I actually had to start outsourcing. For me, it wasn't a choice. I actually couldn't continue delivering to clients if I didn't find a cheap, effective way to get somebody else to do it. So Norway is actually the most expensive country in the world for employment. So I couldn't afford to employ anybody else to edit my images. Yet I had this, revolutionary innovation that I was introducing and launching onto the Norwegian market. And I had to find a way to deliver it at the price that I promised my client, or else I was working, 24 hours a day, which is impossible. So a friend of mine had started outsourcing to the Philippines. I called him up and I asked him, is it going well and how's it working out? And and then I put an ad up and I got lots of people. So I had a problem, and I solved the problem through outsourcing.
So that leads to kind of a question, because I've heard you talk about that. One of the challenges that we have as entrepreneurs, even larger companies, is that moving from what you call being a cog in the wheel to being a business owner. And that paradigm shift now goes from, to doing the work to actually managing a business. And you discussed 4 different levels of entrepreneurs. Why don't you share those so we can have some distinction here in terms of what you're referring to?
Yeah, so the first level is the wantrepreneur. So wantrepreneurs are people that, they read business books, they might be in business, and they've probably always had this dream of starting a business themselves. And there are certain patterns that all entrepreneurs have to go through in terms of starting a business and becoming a successful entrepreneur. So everybody starts off as a wantrepreneur. Some people grow up in a family where there are other entrepreneurs, and they kind of introduce them to the sort of tricks of the trade, if you like. I actually have quite a few entrepreneurial friends that are very, very successful, and they actually had families that trained them from the age of 6, 7 to think like an entrepreneur. So when you go to school and you get a homeschooling at the same time, you get pretty smart in business. But most people actually don't have entrepreneurial parents. So, we go to the school system and we get programmed into thinking that we have to trade our time for money. We have to trade our time for money. Yet, where do you go when your car breaks down? You go to probably go to a mechanic. Some people fix their car themselves, but most people go to the mechanic and fix their car. Most people go to the dentist instead of trying to fix their own teeth. So in life, we are actually outsourcing, but for some reason, the school system actually programs us to think that when it comes to our own business, we should be learning everything ourselves and doing everything ourselves. So, and it's because of the way the school system is structured, is that it's actually fairly non-collaborative. So if you get an assignment, you're pretty much told to sit down, shut up, and get on with the work yourself. Yet in business, the smart thing to do is to get all all the people in a room and ask them, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? And should we collaborate? And can we join forces in making this happen in the best way possible? However, if you do that in school, you're actually, you probably are going to get called for cheating because your assignments will look the same. Yet you did the smart thing as an entrepreneur to collaborate. Another thing is modeling. So if you get an assignment and you actually look at what somebody else did and you say, oh, this actually got a great result. So if I model this thing, then I'll get a good result too. That's also called copying. So there's a lot of these entrepreneurial skill sets that are very, very powerful that get trained out of us in school. So, there's a reason why so many entrepreneurs quit school early. The Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, the list goes on and on with entrepreneurs that kind of go, okay, I can just do this. I can do this in a better way, not myself, but I can do this in a better way. I can learn this faster. So that's the wantrepreneur. The second level is the solopreneur, and a lot of business owners are actually, the dentists, the lawyers, or the doctors, and they're actually trading their time for money, and they can only make much money as they work. So they're trading their time for money. So they're basically an employee in a business where the business is dependent on them. So that's the solopreneur, and that's how a lot of businesses look that way. I think about 90% of all businesses have less than 10 employees. And a lot of those are solopreneurs. Which brings us to the next level, which is the third level, which is the business operator. The business operator has built a business, has got about 10 employees or less, and has built everything around themselves. So it's actually part of feeling significant for a lot of entrepreneurs that are the business operator. They feel significant because if something goes wrong, they have to ask them, which makes them feel superior. The trick here is actually, and the role of the entrepreneur. Have you ever flown on Virgin, Mitch? Have you ever flown on Virgin?
I actually have not.
Okay. So any other airline. So imagine if you were going to fly Virgin. Do you think Richard Branson would check you in at the airport?
If it were me, I would expect him to, but
yeah.
no.
Okay.
Of course not.
So probably not. And the funny thing is, like Richard Branson, he's a fourth level entrepreneur, which is actually the business owner. He has this ability to have a vision, then get the people and the money in place to build an enterprise. And he's done that again and again and again. And the funny thing is, the first business he started was actually a magazine, yet he is dyslexic. So it's difficult to start a magazine and write everything yourself if you are dyslexic. So he actually says in many, many interviews that he didn't have a choice. He had to go out there and actually find people and get them to do it because he couldn't do it himself. But he's probably the best example of all the entrepreneurs out there because he is such a visionary person. You know, he does the job of finding the A players out there, getting them in a room, and then figuring out a way to fund the whole thing. And that's pretty much the three most important skill sets of an entrepreneur: vision, people, and money.
Wow, you said a mouthful there. So let me just recap. The wantrepreneur, the solopreneur, the business operator, and then the business owner. Okay? So given that, those distinctions, so now we're talking to a wide swath of people who are listening to this conversation. Some are entrepreneurs, some are solopreneurs, some are business operators, and some are business owners. And I would imagine a couple of us are maybe more than one of those, right? We try to play more than one role.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest challenges as a business owner, and I've been one for coming on 37 years now, is the whole issue of delegating and letting go. That's always been one of my biggest fears, all right, is delegating and letting go, and maybe even reframing this whole idea of outsourcing. You know, the word outsourcing kind of has all kinds of potential implications, but really what you're doing is, as you say, we're always outsourcing in our lives. We just don't think of it that way. We think of it as creating a network of support vendors, if you will, right? What do you observe is the main fear that entrepreneurs have, and how have you gone about solving it for yourself?
Well, business has a lot of fear in it. Well, for some people, has a lot of fear. It certainly has had a lot of fear for me. Fear of losing clients, fear of getting an unexpected bill, fear of people leaving me. So, which brings us to why don't people actually go out there and outsource, delegate, and build teams? And it's actually really, really simple. It's about trust. Trusting that people will show up, will do a great job, will be there when you fall down, will be there to celebrate with you when you do well. So it's actually all about trust. It's about trusting other people. And we go through life, in school, again, just to go back to school, there were some really mean people at school, and if you dressed differently and you were differently, people would be mean to you. So everybody that is alive today has been hurt by somebody else. And that people, we bring that into our business as well. So for a lot of people, they'll try having employees. Somebody will leave or steal or not show up or do something that wasn't in accordance with what the person that started the company wanted, and then they'll go, okay, fine, this doesn't work. So the real key here is, how do you attract the awesome people? Because there are awesome employees out there. There are awesome people to collaborate with and do awesome things. And I think it's one thing that I've been good at, and which has also given me a lot of freedom and money to kind of live a freedom lifestyle, was that ability to attract and trust other people to do a good job. And then they don't always do a good job. Sometimes they mess up. We all mess up. But it's having that compassion and understanding that, they failed. Okay, so why did you fail? How can you build them up? And my days now are predominantly spent coaching. I ask my CEOs, like, what do you need from me? And it's not money often. It's not. It's usually like guidance and advice. Like, I have this employee. He's difficult. what should we do? I don't know what to do. And then we discuss it, we talk it through, and then sometimes they've done something wrong, and then we talk about that. So it's just to circle back, it all comes back to trust. And the reason why we don't trust people is because we have been scarred at some point in our life, and that we're not willing to go out there and actually find the A players. There's this interview with Steve Jobs. It's called The Lost Interview. And one of the things that he touches upon there is like find A players, because A players want to hang out with A players, and A players do the best work. So how do you attract A players? Well, first of all, you have to stretch yourself and be an A type of person. And people are attracted to somebody that has a vision for something bigger than themselves. So if you have that vision and you're able to communicate that to people that are talented, that want to do something, then you can get this power of momentum that is actually building your dream team and making them help you pull your company forwards.
This podcast is brought to you by MrOutsource.com. Outsourcing to the Philippines done for you.
Wow, you really hit something very deep at a very deep level. The issue of trust, trusting yourself, trusting other people. Really important to give trust. Very often, I think, from my experience, we look at other people. We say, "Well, we are trustworthy." But in order for us to really get trust from others, we almost have to give trust first, right? Mm. That's kind of what you're saying, and so now let's like shift gears a little bit, because you've made some really great points. Not only the trust issue, the self-trust, trusting others, but also creating this little dream team. And I want to, before we get into actually the nuts and bolts of how you would advise somebody to create this dream team, I want to just segue into something that you and I have talked about quite a bit in our conversations, and that is the whole worthiness thing. In other words, whether you're a wantrepreneur, a solopreneur, business operator, or business owner, if you're looking to leverage yourself, leverage your time, you figured out what your time is worth, you realize you're doing tasks and activities that are not equal to the value of your highest paying work. Is there a component that you've experienced of worthiness, of people feeling like I don't deserve to have, I have to work hard, I have to do all this work myself, I can't delegate it out, or whatever it may be? I just want to ask you, have you observed or noticed anything regarding that holds people back, whatever level of the 4 levels of entrepreneur they might be?
Well, I've got to say, when I started out in 2007, I definitely was of that mindset. I wanted to do Mondays to Sundays, 16-hour days. Actually, I at that point, I had a business partner, and he said, "I don't work weekends, sorry." And I was like, that really frustrated me, because I wanted to work really, really, really hard. But it's really about working smart. Because if I think about all the projects I've had over the years, I've had a lot of projects that kind of didn't feel right, and I pursued them anyway. And the reason for that was because I wasn't really too focused. And I think my lack of focus was reasoned back to, what should I be putting my value on? Like, what are my talents, right? So my self-worth, like, how can my worth help other people? So I work very, very differently now than I used to. I don't think that I have to work really, really hard, but I do try to work really, really smart. And I do try to focus on the big dominoes that I should be working on in my life, or want to work on in my life. Mm-hmm. So what are the things that you outsource? I mean, we're really what we're talking about here is building a team of people, or starting at least with one person who totally is dedicated to supporting you. That's the thing that
that really kind of tripped my trigger when we started working together. I have a business partner, but I had never really had a full-time. I had a full-time assistant over the years, but at this point, I was very much reluctant. All right. And then I realized, well, this is great. I could build a team of people around me, starting with one and then going from there, whose 100% focus and job is to support me and make my life easier. So that started to sound really good. So I started to think, well, what are the things that I could actually outsource? And I turned to you and you shared with me all these different great things that I could let go of. So why don't you share some of those things that you outsource?
First of all, I want to address one thing, and also one reason why people don't collaborate and outsource and get people involved, which is the fear of somebody stealing your idea. That is actually good. If there are more people out there selling the same thing as you are wanting to sell, that creates a bigger market. They'll ultimately choose the best provider. So in terms of understanding how to get started in outsourcing, the way I help people is that I explain to them the rule of 4. So in any given business, there are 4 things going on. You have the CEO, who's basically in charge of steering the ship. That it's the captain of the ship, steering the ship in the right direction. Then you have admin and operations. Okay, so that's basically paying the taxes and doing the invoicing, following up the invoicing, contracts, all those kind of things. And then you have sales and marketing. So, outbound activities, onboarding clients, etc. And then you have production. And unless we are clear on the different habits and projects that you have in those different in those 4 different boxes, it gets very difficult to start outsourcing. So one of the exercises that I do is just take a piece of paper, you write down CEO, admin and operations, production, sales and marketing, and then you just list down all the different activities that you have going on. That's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is to write down an H if it's a habit or a P if it's a project. So let's define the different things between habits and projects. A habit is something that you do on a regular basis. So for instance, that could be emailing one conference a day and sending them your speaking bio, right? So for that, you could have like a template email, right? A template email where at the top it could say, please customize this so it seems appealing to the conference organizers, right? And then you have some standard text underneath. And their job is actually to search for conferences relevant to, for instance, selling or outsourcing in my case. And then they then send like this PDF and all this information to them and pitching them on a consistent basis that you want to speak, you can speak about these topics, etc. So that's a habit. So that's something that actually could be going on every single day, because what you actually want to become is oversubscribed. So instead of constantly be like trying to get speaking gigs, you should have people asking you to speak. So you're always oversubscribed, and that kind of creates this attraction, right? So, there's lines outside the Apple store when a new product comes out because everybody wants this new attractive product and there's not enough. That's the kind of effect that we ultimately want. But let's get back to the outsourcing. Now, a project-based task could be, launching a new website, launching a book, anything that has a start and an end is typically a project. And the habits are typically what I look at outsourcing first. You can outsource projects. I suggest you do that too. But to have a full-time employee of some sort, it is actually better to look at the habitual things. So another thing that I suggested to you was contacting podcasts so that you could constantly be interviewed on podcasts and published through that to add to your search and to be more searchable, to reach a larger audience, find joint venture partners, etc. Another one is invoicing. So we invoice once a month, and then we have certain dates where we follow that up. Or you can take outsourcing to the extreme, where I've actually built 2 companies that are profitable based on starting to work with one person and then kind of coaching and training them up over the years. I started with simple tasks. My business partner Regina, she was actually writing blog posts. She was distributing the blog posts on all these different websites, and she was always there. She was always showing up. And then I gave her some other work. I said, "Oh, can you do my travel bills?" "Oh yeah, I can log your travel bills." And now at the end of the month, I simply photograph the receipt. It goes straight into Evernote. She gets a notification. She then, logs that file. And at the end of the month, I send them my credit card bill. And she then justifies all the different costs, sends that to my accountant. So that probably saves me, 3-4 hours a month. Over a year, that's a day, and it's not the kind of work that I really want to be doing. So that's also a perfect thing for outsourcing. But what I would like to say here as well is it's really down to our mindset. It's really down to our thinking. So when it comes to how to get into the mindset of outsourcing, delegation, and building your business up to work without you is actually to ask yourself, what would Richard Branson do? And I oftentimes sit down and I imagine that I'm Richard Branson, and I will think about my companies as he thinks about his companies. Mm-hmm. And that kind of projects me into a different, I would say a higher level of thinking. And when I constantly do that, I constantly come up with more and more things to delegate. But I'm I have a lot of focus on the repeat habits.
So just as an example, what you just said, just those 3 or 4 hours a month, multiply that by a year, and now you've got really more than a day. Mm-hmm. If you figure an 8-hour day, 12 times 4 is 48 divided by 8. That's 6 days, just right. 6 days, 6 days over a course of a year to do paperwork that somebody else can do. So if you figure out what your hourly rate is in terms of how much money you actually earn when you do your highest paying work, you could almost pay for somebody with 1 or 2 tasks, especially if you're very highly paid and you are the CEO as you describe, and you find yourself doing anything other than CEO work, or even if, let's say, you're a sales CEO, like many CEOs are today, they're sales and marketing CEOs. They're out there promoting the business. They're out there speaking, or they're out there, rustling the leaves. And so you could take any one of these many different outsourcing tasks, add them up over the course of the year, and realize that, it doesn't take very much freeing up of your time, not to mention the mental relief and lack of stress, knowing stuff is getting done, it's not sitting. So from an economic point of view, an ROI point of view, this is almost a no-brainer, particularly if you're able to outsource, let's say, through you to the Philippines, where you can get a much better dollar-for-dollar return. So this leads me to a question, which was one of the burning questions I had, and maybe even actually held me back for quite a while, is how do you actually find the right person, somebody you're compatible with, and then how do you work with somebody who essentially may be 12 hours time difference from you? Talk a little bit about that, because that was one of the biggest challenges I had. Obviously, you solved it for me. Talk a little bit about how do we find the right person, and then how do you operate and work with somebody in a different time zone if you're used to, let's say, working with people, in the next cubicle or the next office.
This podcast is brought to you by MrOutsource.com. Outsourcing to the Philippines done for you.
Excellent question. So there are a couple of different ways of doing this. I've tried all of them. You have the sort of freelancer.com. I think they've changed their name actually. Guru, I think they changed their name too. But you have all these websites where you can go and you can like search for people, and they have ratings and reviews and all that. And there's a way of doing that more effectively, which is actually having a VA to find them for you, because I don't do those kind of things anymore. If I need a certain type of person, I'll tell my general virtual assistant that I want this type of person. Please find that person, which is a project-based task. So you have all these websites where there's lots of people. That's typically more expensive than sort of going to Craigslist or solid.ph or onlinejobs.ph. Where basically there are websites you can put a job up. There are people looking for jobs, and you're going to have to interview them, screen them, test them, train them, do all that stuff yourself. That's how I got started in outsourcing. That was my process. And you could also go to actually managed companies as well. So there's a few managed companies that have employees that actually work within a company, and you can hire them through the company. That is the most expensive way to do it. And then there's like a third way, and what I have found is that is the ultimate way for entrepreneurs and smaller businesses. So what we've done is we've created a hybrid model. And the hybrid model means that we have a co-working space. So in that co-working space, we have foreigners, we have Filipinos, we have people from all different kinds of backgrounds, like graphic designers, web designers, SEO, different types of programming. We have lots of virtual assistants, photo editors, etc. Okay, so in a co-working space in the Philippines. So basically what a lot of our clients are doing is that they're actually renting an office space for their VA to work in our office, because when you work in a shared office with other people, you can ultimately just ask somebody else if you have a problem rather than asking your boss. So they'll rather ask the person next to them, and then they'll help them because they're friends, instead of them asking you questions, right? So you get smarter people by getting them to work with smarter people in a shared space. That's one thing. Another thing that we do very differently is that we're actually really big in personal development in Davao City in the Philippines, where we're based. So we've actually taken a lot of these sort of personal development courses from the Western world, and we've introduced them in the Philippines. So what we do is we actually have virtual assistant training that people have to pay for. So it's 200 pesos for 8 hours. And then if you want to if you want to become a VIP VA, you have to go through 10 days of training, which is also paid. And that's important that it's paid, because people have a different relationship to a course when it's paid.
Meaning they pay for it.
They pay for it.
So they're investing in their own business of being an independent VA, so to speak.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And then we do 10 days of training with them, which then they do tests, also different types of techniques and all the sort of stuff that I've been training my team in over the years. They basically learn the same stuff, and then they get put on a list where we actually connect them with the appropriate boss or business. So when people go through Mr. Outsource, if you go to mroutsource.com, you get a 30-minute free business outsourcing audit. So basically, one of our people will jump on a call with you, would listen to like, what kind of business do you have? Where's your pain? We might do some exercises with you, 3 steps to freedom, or we might do the rule of 4, just trying to really figure out and dig into your business and figure out where your need is. And then after that, we will, we charge to actually connect you with one of our trained virtual assistants. And that is the process that we have developed through quite a few years of trying to figure out what the ideal system is for entrepreneurs.
Well, that's much more extensive than I believe people perceive. They think in terms of VAs. It's almost like you're just throwing people into a room, but you take them, you screen them, you take them through training, you make sure that they invest in their own career, which I think is fabulous. That it really it adds a level of ownership to their work, and I actually see that in working with our VA. She's very excited. She feels like she owns her job. I don't feel in any way, shape, or form as if she's a part-time or a short-term employee. And that's one of the biggest issues that I was concerned about is if I go this route, am I going to get another VA every 2 months? Is that person going to be moving on? Are they going to be leaving? Is there going to be some stability and continuity that I could let go of some of the things that I have that are not just habitual, the habits, but also start to have that person be part of our projects and know that they're going to be there. And when you told me about the extensive background work you do and the training you do, I thought, wow, if people could really understand, especially the solopreneurs and the wantrepreneurs and even the business operators who know what it takes to operate a business and find people and train them. And my goodness, that's thousands and tens of thousands of dollars potentially that you save, that you don't have to go through that process and hire somebody and lose them. And that was one of the biggest issues. Now I feel very different. I feel like the person we're working with is in the game with us for the long haul. And of course, we're working with her full time. So talk a little bit about the different ways in which people can utilize VAs from a point of view of part-time or full-time, and do they have individual talents that you match them? And, how do you actually, is that what the whole 30-minute outsourcing business audit really reveals, is how do we figure out the best way for you to move forward and get started in this process?
Yeah. So basically, our success depends on your success. The way it works is that they become part of our basically freelance team. So we actually charge a management fee on top of their salary, which basically is negotiating their payment, invoicing for them, making sure that they're paying their taxes, that they got insurance, that all these things that a lot of people that are freelancing don't know about or do. We actually help them with all that. We actually take a 30% cut of their salary. But actually that serves both the client and the VA. One of the questions that you asked earlier was, how do you work with VAs across time zones? And I do want to reply to that question. Mm-hmm. The thing is, in the Philippines, there's actually a culture for working at night. Outsourcing is growing immensely in the Philippines, and it's also a very attractive job to have. It's seen as a very big status to have a Western boss. So if you're in the US, if you're in California, it's normal to work during the working hours of your boss. That's kind of taken as a given. So a lot of people react to that and kind of go, "Oh, I don't want them to work when they should be sleeping, etc." But it's actually very normal. So don't worry about that. That is actually a job requirement to be available when you are available too. They are you are paying them, so you get to decide, and it's also highly accepted. So that's just important to answer that as well, because that's quite a common question. What was the other part of the question that you asked?
Yeah, I was like, when you look at different people to associate with, it's important that we know the tasks and the work that we need to get done, so that you can make the best match of people. And we interviewed, I think, 3 or 4 people, and then found someone who seemed to be most compatible. So for us, it was great. It was efficient. It was fast. You set it all up. All we did was show up for 15, 20 minutes on a Skype call, get acquainted with them, ask them some questions. And I think after 3 or 4 conversations, we had the person we wanted to work with, and it felt like a good match. So talk a little bit about the suite of services. Like, do you have to hire somebody full-time? Can you work part-time? Can I do things like specific task work and match somebody who has specific talents and abilities? just address some of those specifics a little bit, if you would.
Yeah. So, well, obviously we're a matchmaker, so it takes a little bit of time. You need to meet quite a few people, and that's basically part of the service. So, the important part is to really, really understand who each person is. So one way of doing that is doing personality tests. So there's one called Talent Dynamics, where you fill that in and then you figure out, oh, I'm a creative. Okay, well, I'm a mechanic, or we're always dominant in one or the other. And typically what people do is they'll hire people similar to them because they like them, right? But in business, you should actually be employing a lot of people that you don't necessarily, get along with, you don't click with, but they're still good people. It's just, for some people, they look at their accountant and they go, this person's weird because he does numbers and he likes it or she likes it. But the thing is, they really like it. They're just different than you. So the skill set that we have is this understanding of what does the entrepreneur need? What kind of person is the entrepreneur? And then we say, oh, this is the kind of component that you need to take your business to the next level. And oftentimes it's just somebody that's a little bit more organized. So typically entrepreneurs, speakers, they are typically creative, right? More creative, more outgoing, kind of socializing, talking to people, not really a big fan of invoicing and chasing invoices. So you need somebody like that. So it's partly mechanics, it's partly intuition. Obviously, we've been doing this for a few years now, so we kind of understand people's businesses and people more and more. So it's partly mechanics, partly intuition.
And of course, you handle all the financials, the paperwork. We just make the payment. We don't have to deal with taking out taxes or. Right. You pretty much handle all the admin, all the operations, all that stuff. So, who would you say would be ideal? I mean, who are you really looking for? So, I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm either overworked or feeling as though it may be the right time for me now to jump into this water. Or maybe I've actually jumped into this water, but I'm not satisfied with the people that I'm swimming with. All right. So who are you best suited to serve?
We are really about the person that is in business already making money, solopreneur or business operator. Those are the people that we find we can really, really help. If you are a wantrepreneur and you have money, then obviously getting stuff done will be a lot faster. If you have a team, but our sort of sweet spot is the sort of solopreneur or business operator that wants to move things forwards. A very common thread in business and entrepreneurship is that things have to happen really, really fast. It's because of media, instant coffee, instant apps, instant TV, instant this, instant that. But the thing is, business is a lot about delayed gratification. So understanding that building a solid team, building a relationship with your general virtual assistant. I've had my she's not my general virtual assistant anymore, she's my business partner, but she was my VA for since early 2009, late 2008. So that's a lot of years, right? And I always look at these kind of long-term things. And that's taken me a long time to figure out as well. But now when I sit down with a project, I go, oh, is this something that I want to be doing for a long period of time? And if it isn't, I won't do it. So, if you want to have freedom in your business, if you want to scale, then, why not take some of the money that you're earning and invest it in somebody else so that you can have this relationship with a team partner that's going to save weeks and weeks and months, and if not years and decades of your life, so that you can actually spend more time doing the things that you really want to do. It's interesting when you ask me, what do you outsource? And I mean, the whole company, Mr. Outsource, is actually, I don't operate and run it. I work with the team. I coach them, right? But my job predominantly is actually training and working with the entrepreneurs to help them outsource better.
Mm. So we're talking with Erlend Bakke. MrOutsource.com is where you can get your outsourcing business audit. We went through this process with you, Erlend. It was really eye-opening. Just going through this process alone, you could easily charge $500 for it or more, because you don't just sit there, and it's not one of those typical strategy sessions where you're just, pitching us and selling us and pressing our pain. It's really a true business audit. And we realized that in the context of that conversation, there were so many things that we could hand off. And a lot of it was my own reluctance, my own control issues, as a business owner. And truly, I got to the point where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to just do what I love to do. And I've been at this game 37 years, and I've had I've had a business with 30 employees. I've had a business with 0 employees. I've had businesses with everything in between. And after going through this business audit, the thing that jumped into my mind first was, why didn't I do this sooner? That's probably the thing that I keep looking back on and saying, if I really would have done this sooner. Now, of course, it has to fit for your situation, and but you really have no risk. Talk about the risk here, because even if you give it a try and it doesn't work out, but what we've discovered is, as reluctant as I was, once I got into it, I started to feel like I could let go of things that I was previously holding on to, and it opened up some pretty heavy-duty mental bandwidth, not just the physical tasks and activities that sometimes I was doing unconsciously. So it really helped open up a lot of mental bandwidth. So what would you say to somebody right now who's kind of sitting on the fence? I know what I would say is just, go through the business audit and see if it makes sense. What would you say if they're sitting on the fence wondering, is this the right time? Is this the right move for me? What last piece of advice would you have for that person?
Well, a lot of people think that, I have to employ this person full time. No, you don't. You can actually pay per hour. So I think the most important thing is to get started. And just, if you choose to go with us, if you don't choose with us, here's what's going to happen. You're going to learn something. You're going to figure out that, these are the things I need to be outsourcing, or this is how the process works. And, I need to attract A players, not only abroad, but in my own country. Like, I need to have a certain type of client. I need the best, what is my ideal client? Which is also like, the same question is like, what's my ideal team, right? So the most important thing, and the worst place that I I don't like being, is when I'm just stuck and I'm not moving. The essence is basically to get moving. If you want to scale your business, if you want more free time, you want to make more money, then other people's time is really how I've built my whole sort of freedom lifestyle. I mean, I've spent the last 4 years just traveling the world, and today I got up, I had some early morning meetings, and then I went and I did like 1 hour of yoga, and then I had a long lunch with a friend, and then I walked through the park, and then eventually I made my way back to my office, and I know things are going down. I know I'm making money. I know things are moving forwards. And, I'm working on the things that I need to work on, and other people are working on the things that they need to work on. And everybody kind of knows what they're doing. And it's just a great feeling, because it didn't used to be like that.
Well, I can second that feeling, because for the past 6 months that we've been working with you, there's a lightness to my step, and I feel like I'm not as trapped as I used to be. So for that, I want to thank you. I also want to thank you for taking the time today to share what I believe is going to be one of the biggest and most important steps whether you're a solopreneur or business operator, even if you're a business owner, to start looking into the idea of building a bigger, better, stronger team, and not just looking parochially around your neighborhood or your local area. That there's a lot of very talented people who work hard, and I think that also impressed me is the work ethic. We here in America, let's face it, we don't have the same kind of work ethic as many people around the world do, and that's a general statement, of course. Everybody has their own individual work ethic, but my observation is that there's a very strong desire to do well, be competent, fulfill responsibility, and do a good job. There's a lot of pride I see in the job that our VA does. And that's something that you sometimes really cannot put a price tag on. Obviously you do, but that's an intrinsic quality that I'm observing. A lot of people around the world are talented and looking for an opportunity to move up in life. And this may be a chance not only for us to get a better deal and to get a better team around us, but also to give someone else who's really eager and excited and willing to work hard and learn and grow an opportunity to improve their quality of life and their standard of living. And so from that point of view, I also want to applaud you and commend you because not only are you helping the entrepreneur, you're providing an amazingly great service and a way for people to move up the social economic ladder, if you will, by being more valuable to people in other parts of the world. So for that, I give you kudos, and it's really been a pleasure to work with you and your team over the past 6 to 9 months. So I want to encourage you to take advantage of the business audit at mroutsource.com. Erlend is very much involved, and so even though he outsources his business, when it comes down to making the important decision, you've always been there for us, and I want to thank you for that. So any parting words or any last advice or counsel you want to share before we wrap up today?
I think you really nailed it when you said, why we do what we do. Basically, it's, I was trapped as an entrepreneur. I was really burnt out. I was overworked. And, then I found this outsourcing stuff, and it really worked for me. It's worked for me year after year. And that's why we started the business. We started the business to liberate entrepreneurs. And we started the business to help people in the Philippines, get smarter, get better, have more stability, work online, get access to all this knowledge that we built up all over the years. And it's really rooted in that I really like Filipinos. They have done so many good things for me, and they are honest and they are proud and they do the best that they can, and they're just amazing people. And that's why we started this company, and that's why we do what we do.
Erlend Bakke, Mr. Outsource. Been an absolute pleasure, delight. It's been fun working with you. I look forward to continuing our relationship long into the future. If you've gotten anything out of this conversation, please let us know. Drop us a line. And I really do encourage you to take advantage of Erlend's 30-minute business audit. It's an eye-opening experience. At the very least, you will get organized around what you can outsource in your business and how you can liberate yourself and free yourself up to do the things that you really got into business to do. So, Erlend, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an eye-opening conversation. You really gave some amazing tips. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So this is Mitch Axelrod signing off for another game-changing conversation. Today my guest was Erlend Bakke, Mr. Outsource. And I want to encourage you to take a look at what you have in your business and improve your leverage ability, whether it's your time, your skill, your people around you. Start thinking of outsourcing not just as delegating, but as building a team of people. Because remember this, and the new game is all about interdependence. And the more interdependent you can be, The more you're willing to support others and be supported, the faster and more enjoyable you're going to experience your success. So until next time, remember this: you're a player. You can change your game. And I look forward to being with you on the new game playing field again very soon for another game-changing conversation. So long.
This podcast is brought to you by MrOutsource.com. Outsourcing to the Philippines done for you. Mr. Outsource is a recruitment company matching busy entrepreneurs with Filipino virtual assistants, so you can have the time to focus on what's important.